Hello, beautiful human. I'm Zach. That is Dana. Welcome to the studio. A human being who is a musician, TV star, and a former TRL stable, an icon in many ways.
Oh, I'll take that.
We're celebrating the 20th anniversary of his debut LP. Take it all away. Say hello to Ryan Cabrera.
What's up, y'all? What's up? What's up, everybody? Wherever these are.
Okay.
Wherever you are.
So you invite 100 friends of yours to a cruise.
Yes.
Okay, like, are you paying for
To
this?
celebrate your own?
Are they paying?
Well, no. So it started with our 1-year anniversary. We threw a prom, like a 90s, 2000s prom. So I never went to prom. Oh. So me and my wife are talking, and we like to do, so even like, we're a little like non-traditional in the sense that we like to celebrate with our friends as well, and
That's
then
so
do our own
special.
thing as well. So like for our wedding honeymoon, we did 4 days together in Hawaii, just me and her, and then we did 4 days with like 6 of our friends. So we did half and half. So for our anniversary, we wanted to, kind of celebrate. And basically, it was just an excuse to get everybody together again, just to celebrate love. It wasn't really about us. It's not like, hey, come celebrate us. But it is a way to get all these people, together in one room. So we were like, I never went to prom. And then she was like, oh my God, we have to throw a prom then. And we were like, all right, let's do it for her anniversary. So we had a big prom party here in Hollywood. And then the next year we're like, all right, how do we outdo prom? Because we literally recreated prom. Like we had like slap bracelets. We had, all for one, Jamie from All for One perform, like Nick from Walk the Moon perform. Like we had all these Jax performed, 90s, 2000s cover band. So it was like hard to outdo that. And like, how are we going to outdo it? And then we thought like, all right, what if we take we call this the shit show. Our wedding was deemed the shit show. Or am I allowed to say that here?
Yeah.
Okay. So the wedding, we called it the shit show, like welcome to the shit show. So then I kind of thought, I was like, what if we took it to the sea and did the ship show?
That's scary.
So we went on an adults-only cruise and celebrated the welcome to the ship show, for our anniversary. And then it led me to forget our actual anniversary. So the day before, my wife's like, did you forget our anniversary? Or I said, yes, I did. And so I was like, oh man, I gotta think of something. So I was like, all right, we're gonna do a staycation, just me and you, because now we have a baby. So who's 17 months old.
Congratulations.
So thank you. So we barely get any, alone time. There's always people around, baby and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, all right, I'm taking you to Calamigos Ranch in Malibu, and it's going to be just me and you, and we'll do that. And it was amazing. So I just got back from that. So I dropped her off and then came straight here.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, of course.
But okay, let's get back to this cruise. You're able to convince 100 people that to get on a cruise with you?
Well, there was a lot more invited. That was just as big as we can get, because we were trying to do it the most like, okay, we're not going to do like a 7-day cruise. We don't, obviously people work. Everyone's invited, whether they want to go or not. I think we gave them a year, like a little bit less than a year advance notice. So I'd been planning this for a year with Virgin of, hey, I'm giving you an early heads up. Next year, get sitters for your kids, call the favors from your parents. We're taking 4 days and we're doing a 4-day cruise, and it was amazing.
That's a lot of fun.
I do know you like to party. It's actually funny you mentioned that. I told some friends you were coming in. They're like, we used to party at his house in North Hollywood all the time when we were
Amount
younger.
of times I've heard that. So my wife had to learn that because, going out, she's like, everywhere we'd go, they'd be like, hey, Ryan, what's up? I'm like, what's up, man? Kind of like, they're like, I've been to your house. I'm like, oh, okay. So now I just assume like when someone's like, hey man, we used to hang out. Like, have you been to my house? Like, yeah. We used to go to your house. We used to have, it was a good time. It was a different time. That was like 10 years ago. I used to throw a lot of house parties. My neighbors hated me, but my neighbor was also, my neighbors above me hate, but my neighbor at that time was Rob Dyrdek, and this was when he was doing Robin Big. So that was literally his back wall and my back wall, where like we would throw water balloons over at each other in the middle of the day. So it was like that corner of the block was a good time. Yeah.
Do you look back at those times like in the best light?
Of course. I mean, it was amazing. It was so much fun. It was a different kind of time growing up. Nobody was really doing social media at that time. Like you weren't hanging to try to capture a moment on your phone. You know what I'm saying? You were just hanging. I think a lot of people now are, really a little bit more focused on capturing a moment.
Yeah,
or
man, they're exploiting every personal
to just put it
thing
on their social media, and it's like that didn't exist. So those days of partying were you're just hanging with each other, having a good time. We play a lot of games, and a lot of shenanigans. But I look back at it, we have so many good memories and met so many people, in this town, which is, a town that obviously, a lot of people, you can easily get steered in the wrong direction. We weren't about like doing like dumb shit. You know, we were just having a good time.
Do you feel like the lack of connectivity to the outside world allowed you to maybe foster more genuine relationships?
Yeah,
than
absolutely.
Today?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because you had nothing to do but hang out with each other. You know, you were actually talking. I think I was talking to a buddy at Calamigos who was there. He's like, dude, because he owns a club that's, you know, doing pretty well now, and it's a different generation. He's like, dude, we'll sit there and just watch, and like nobody's talking. Like nobody's talking to each other, and you know everybody's either on their phone or whatnot, which obviously we know is a thing. But yeah, you know, then you just had to whatever happened in that moment happened, and that's kind of it was a lot of music based too. Like a lot of jam sessions would happen late nights where people just be around the piano, and you weren't really worried about like, oh, I got to get this on film so I can post it. It was just you were there. If you got to be there in that room. It was special, and you shared that, and you connected in that moment, and then you moved on to the next.
What is it like to like see that go away in real time?
I mean, I'm glad I at least got to experience it. You know,
Yeah.
and you mentioned like TRL, like that kind of thing. I know,
There's
you know,
so
they try to
much.
bring stuff like that back, but
work.
it doesn't work. Like it was in that moment. It couldn't be any better than it was. So I mean, I'm just, you know, glad and honored that I at least got to be a part of it before, you know, I'm glad I was born when I was and got to experience things like TRL, things what like the music business was when you had to, you know, pay your dues like the hard way and tour around and play for nobody. And you have to get discovered. You have to go into a room with an acoustic guitar and sing for someone just like this, you know, behind a desk and be like, so you want to sign me? You know, there was no numbers. You know, there was no like, all right, I built up 3 million followers, you know, online. Now you should sign me. I was like, no, you got to go room to room, pay your dues. And that taught me a lot. So I appreciate, you know, that time period and getting to experience that.
And it is like very different, right? Like you were a musician of a time period where like your music can still make you money today. Whereas
It's wild.
today,
So we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of a song that I still get texts every day of my buddy, like, literally calling me like, yo, I just heard me hearing your song. They're blasting it at whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's so cool to think of something that, you know, you put out 20 years ago and it's still, you know, getting played. We did this new version of On the Way Down for that reason, just to kind of do like a modern take on it. And then, you know, next thing you know, we're at Sirius Hits 1, you know, playing that song and hearing it. I heard it, you know, in the car after, you know, like Doja Cat, you know, for a song that came out 20 years ago. It's wild.
but it is wild. Like because a timeless record released 20 years ago is not the same as a timeless record released in 2025, right?
No,
Like
it's very different.
even the monetary metrics on it are gravely different.
Yeah.
Like what one can make off of a timeless record today compared to back then, like
Yeah, that's the fun part, because when you'll just get random emails of like, you know, the residual checks and stuff from a song for, you know, certain songs and stuff. What's funny is like actually True. So True was my second single, which was like a ballad.
It's iconic.
Was still like way bigger than On the Way Down. It's somehow everyone thinks that like On the Way Down was like, you know, my biggest record, and it actually was. It was True.
but are you judging that based on like syncs or
I mean, all across the board, like where it's
everything?
playing, royalties, you know, how many plays it gets, because now everything is what playlists it gets added on, and you know, it's fun. It's one of the cool things now is you could see like where people are still listening to certain things, or like in certain areas, like we can go, all right, who's listening to the last song, like the newest song we put out, and then who's like kind of listening more to the older stuff. So then when we tour, you know, I know like, all right, on this city, I'm going to play more like the older nostalgic stuff. Or in like, you know, if we go to the Philippines, you know, I can play all new stuff because they think, you know, like
but when
the
you
new
say
stuff is
new,
brand
it's still 2008, right?
no, the newest stuff we put out was last year. So I put out one song called RX.
Oh, okay. I was
No,
going
actually, no, I
based
didn't
on
call it
albums.
RX. What did
I'm
I end up
sorry.
calling it? Prescription of You.
I don't even remember.
No, I don't, because I call it RX and my wife calls it RX because the demo was always called
RX.
RX. And then you have that like debate with, you know, management and labels like, yo, should we call it RX? Should we call it Prescription of You? And I
Well,
forgot
by
we
the
ended
way,
up going with Prescription
we
of
have
You.
Prescription of You in my notes, and it came out in 2023. But I was judging
2023.
it
My
based
gosh,
on
time
albums.
flies.
You haven't
Okay,
had
so
an album in almost like 18 years.
That's
yeah, full
it,
album.
2008.
Yeah, correct. Haven't put out an album since 2008 because now it's more like EPs. You know, you throw out a song or like 4 or 5 songs. You know, it's that time period where if you put out too much, you know, people don't even know where to go with it. There's like, okay, wait, what do I focus on? And you'll have so many tracks that are missed. You know, whereas, you know, I'm a person who, with an album, my favorite songs were like number 11, you know, number 12, like the songs that nobody ever heard because they weren't on the radio. So, you know, as a writer, you never want like those songs to get missed because there's too many. So for someone like me, it's, you know, kind of smarter to just, you know, every once in a while drop some stuff and then, you know, see if, you know, if it hits or whatnot. But, you know, luckily I've been touring my whole life. So that's everything for me is just getting to tour and perform live.
It is wild. Like the art of the album, like today is like, it's so different than before. Like even down to the physicality of it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
people needed to own it and hold it, and like your music became theirs. Like it was
Yeah.
a very physical thing.
Dude, that was the best part. Is like opening it up and looking through it and all that kind of stuff. But you know, obviously the times have changed, so it's like figuring it out. You know, for an artist like me
crazy.
who's, you know, been out for a long time, it's like, do you go with like, all right, I'm going to try to go to radio and have a hit song, you know, or do you just, you know, you take the, you know, day to day and go, I'm just going to write new music, put it out to places and see, you know, where it goes or if it finds a home somewhere or if it gets picked up on a, you know, a show or a soundtrack or a commercial. And some random stuff will happen, you know, like there's certain songs that put out and ends up becoming like a theme song for a hockey team, which, you know, now is pretty cool for me to like go to an arena and hear that, you know, a song that nobody knows is you. Or, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I've done that people are like, wait, that was you? I had no idea. But like, well, you know, we're always just throwing stuff out there.
I just want to say, I did just look up the streams, and True just blows on the way down, like out of the water.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
It's crazy. You never, why?
No idea.
But people associate you with On the Way Down, so
Yeah,
like, why not?
Maybe because it's the first one that you came out with, and you know, I guess that time, like everyone thinks that was the biggest song, and they, you know, well that one, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I think it's like because it's a love song or a playlist. I don't even know.
But also, how amazing to have not one but two back-to-back. Like those are back-to-back hits.
Oh, it's great.
Those are back-to-back.
And I was ready to
slams.
put out more on that album too, but too, my story was kind of wild and a little bit different than most because when we were trying to put out that record, the Ashlee Simpson Show came out, which is a reality show on MTV that, you know, we were coming up at the same time, and the label and that show came out and kind of blew up the album. So when the album was released, the label wasn't ready for it because they didn't know what to expect. I was a new artist. They were like, they weren't like gung ho, like, hey, we're gonna push Ryan Cabrera really hard. And you know, Joe Simpson, who was my manager at the time, had a different plan. He's like, yo, you and Ashlee, we're gonna create a show around, you know, her and you and your relationship, all that kind of stuff. And that just all of a sudden blew it up. So when the album came out, the stores didn't even have them because they sold out everywhere. So there wasn't even enough albums for people to buy for it to do what it was gonna do. So it was kind of crazy. And the label had to play catch up. They're like, wait, we weren't expecting, you know, so many people to buy the album. And so then that kind of happened because of the TV show. And then they were like, boom, success, you know, hit pretty quick. We worked the record for a long time, you know, under the scenes. But when it hit, it happened pretty fast at that time. And then they were like already, I wasn't even done promoting that album. I hadn't even toured overseas. I hadn't done anything yet. They're like, I got another show on MTV after Ashlee's show. So then they were like, yo, the TV show, I had my own show, which was after TRL every day. They're like, dude, we got to capitalize on your TV show. So we need to put out another album quick. And I'm like, whoa. I was like, we're still on True. Like True's not even, you know, done with what it could potentially do yet. And we still felt like we had other singles on that album, but because of that TV show, it kind of made them be like, we need a new album. And so I wrote my second album in like a couple months because they wanted me to perform it at the end of every episode. So it was like, boom, boom, boom. So I was like, there's still life left and True and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty crazy.
It is really interesting because, like, you know, for my generation, like our versions of this would be like of Hannah Montana, like, but it was a scripted show, so it's totally different. This is your real life reality being exploited on television across numerous shows, not just one, but like you become a part of the Hills, you become a part of this entire.
Well, that was a whole different time period.
But
that was a different experience altogether because that was like
long standing.
I'd already done some, obviously the stuff with Ashlee, and I was around Jessica and Nick and all that. When reality shows were like, all right, this was following you guys' just everyday life. Like whatever happens with you guys happens.
Real reality.
Yeah, like that was just a time where there was a
real?
Yeah, that was just it was whatever happened that day. There was no like, hey, here's what you guys are gonna do today. It was they had a camera and we lived in the same apartment complex because we moved in the same place and then it was real. So then fast forward and I was dating Audrina at that time and she was on that show and she's like, I kind of need, for this, can you come on, whatever, because in order for me to not have a storyline with somebody else, like we need you around, whatever. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I've been around that stuff before. I'm used to it. And then you get there and it's a whole different time period. And they're like, all right, so here's what you're going to say and here's what you're going to do and here's who I need you to talk about. I'm like, wait, I don't know those people. I was like, I know my girlfriend. I know Audrina. I don't know anybody else on that show. And who am I even talking about? And they wanted me to like say stuff about people that I didn't really know. I'm like, yeah, this is weird. So that was a whole different world.
You've seen so many shifts of culture in so many facets of the entertainment industry.
Damn, you're right. Yeah, music business changed so much. I mean, it's like probably every 5 to 10 years.
It changes.
Yeah, it changes.
But reality TV, like that's an interesting change because all of that work that like that team like produced on the Hills was all inspired by what you guys were doing.
Yeah.
Like
where to start, like Osbournes.
The Osbournes,
right? Yeah.
what you were doing at the Sims.
Osbournes and the Newlyweds.
It was all inspired by that. So for them to take real reality and then to try to hyper fabricate it.
Well, they probably had to because at some point and I thought this at the beginning too, was because when Joe came to the house, because we were all living together at the time, and he was like, all right, so we have a show. It's going to be a reality show. It's just going to follow Jess and Nick. And I watched the Osbournes, was a fan of that show. I was like, you're going to follow Jess and Nick? I was like, that's going to be boring. I was like, you're just going to follow them around. And I thought the same thing about myself and Ashlee. I'm like, this is going to be boring. But then, ended up being entertaining, I guess, somehow. But then at some point, there are going to be people that you follow and, you take, because I think on that show, the whoever created it just found the people at the pool. None of them knew each other. They were just, pretty people all hanging out at a pool. And was like, all right, I need you to, do you want to come be on this show, whatever? Do you want to come be on the show? And put them all together. And it's like, they don't really have actual real life interactions. So
they don't know each other.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure some of them did, but
not real.
So it's like, you're going to have to give them some pointers and some things to do, obviously, or else it will get to that stagnant point of like, yeah, what are we watching? These people are kind of boring,
Your story is really crazy. Like you were just performing at a bar in Texas, and then Joe Simpson like just heard you and came up to you, right?
I was at the Hard Rock, yeah. Well, he was, yeah. So me and Jessica had the same voice teacher, and so I think she had told him about me, and he was like there for her, and then saw me play, and was literally like, "Yo, I think we should work together. You should come out to LA." And I'm like, all right, well, I just started school. I was 3 months into college at UTD. And he was like, you're going to move to LA and move in with me and the family. And I'm like, all right. So I packed a bag. 2 days later, I didn't even have a pair of shoes. I had flippy floppies on, a suitcase. And then I was living in Encino, California with the Simpson family, literally 2 days later.
But that's like only something like the kid version of you would do. Right? Like imagine if that.
I've always been pretty spontaneous. Obviously now with the family and all that kind of stuff. But it was,
That's
at the time too, when you're young, it could have been a complete mistake and a complete failure. But if you don't try it, you'll never know. So it's still been worth the experience. But luckily, it worked out because, we grinded and went from desk to desk and sang. And I remember singing with no shoes. I was singing for the president of Atlantic or Lava Records at the time, and Joe's like, you can't wear flip flops into a meeting with the president, and I was so naive. I was like I don't know, I'm just singing my songs. So he got me a pair of shoes and left them at my door. They were hideous.
So when you're performing, going desk to desk, what are you singing? What records?
At that time, I was just singing whatever I wrote.
What was it?
I wrote a song. It was a song called Blind Sight. And it actually made my very first record, but I wrote that song and just sang that for it. And that was how I learned how to really, really like perform and kind of take over a crowd and like own a crowd. It was just one person, because to entertain one person or two people or three people is way harder than entertaining 20,000 people. You know, because it's just you and them, and I learned really quick because the guy it was exactly how you would think like out of a movie. He's like, all right, entertain me. I thought I'd come in and be like, yo, so where you from? Like, what's your name? Like, how'd you get started? Tell me a little bit about yourself. It was none of that. There was no like getting to know each other. It was just, all right, entertain me. Like, does that mean I get my guitar out now? Like, what? And so I would do it and I would sing for him. And then I remember them like one of the guys not paying attention to me. And I was like, well, I'm singing for nobody. You're on your computer checking emails, smoking a cigar. So I saw a bunch of girls at the desks out there. So I'm going to go perform for them. And so I was like, hey, I'm singing here. So if you guys want to come in, like this guy's not even paying attention to me. And so I brought a bunch of girls from the hall or outside at their desk. And they're like, sure. And then he was like, what just happened? All right, this kid's got something. I don't know what it is, but I like that. So that was kind of what my start in everything. And then
Who ends up signing you?
the same people that turned me down. I got rejected by every label. Said, all right, we love his look, we love his voice, and I understand this now, but at the time they're like, but we don't hear a hit song, so no thank you. And so Evan Lamberg, who was running EMI at the time, was like, I'm gonna give you a publishing deal, I'm gonna give you some money so you can live, you keep writing, and eventually you'll be an imprint on my label, but I know you're gonna do it. And then I wrote On the Way Down, and then that same label, I get a call, I was like, so Atlantic Records, the same people that said no before heard that, was like, oh no, we love him. Remember we said we love him? Like, well, so I ended up signing with them. But through Evan. So Evan was like the true believer.
Can we talk about the story of just the entire album and obviously the record, right? Like there is a story here because it is a fight, right? I didn't know that there's a fight that goes on between you and the producer at one point.
It was John Rzeznik, right?
Yeah.
Of the Goo Goo Dolls.
Yeah. And that was an experience all of its own. Yeah. Me and Johnny. So Johnny Rzeznik, we initially met just to kind of write as a session, and then we ended up writing like 3 or 4 songs together. It was only supposed to be one, and like we were vibing, and he had never really produced at the time, and
like Goo Goo Dolls are flamethrowing at this point,
dude.
right?
I mean,
like,
that's
they're
my
hotter
hero.
than hot.
That was my hero. I was joking at the time. They said if you could work with anybody in the world, like who would it be? I said Rob Thomas or Johnny Rzeznik or Dave Matthews, and they hit me back. I was like, yo, Johnny wants to meet you. I was like, all right. So I went to his house just to meet, play him some stuff I'd been working on, and then we ended up writing a song that afternoon, and then that turned into a bunch of songs. And I was like, dude, you're already kind of invested. Like, would you produce the album? So we do it. And then, so he's producing his first album with this young, artist who thinks he knows it all. He has already done it all, so he actually does know something. I'm young, naive, think I know it all, and this is my record, here's how I want to sound like. So eventually, of course, naturally, that's going to turn into some tension because I wanted to do it my way. He's a successful rock star, he wants to do it his way, and then that turned into a thing. So eventually, Evan had to fly in from New York and sit us down before every session in the morning, and I'd be in one chair, I'd be in the other, be like, okay, what are you guys working on today? How are you going to get it done? It was almost like marriage counseling of like figuring out how to finish this record because they had already spent so much money on it, and at that time it wasn't looking like it was going to get finished. And
what was the disconnect?
Like he had his ideas of how he wanted it to sound, and me as the artist at the time was very, very like strong-minded of like, here's how I hear it, and it's my album. So at the end of the day, no one's gonna hear the Ryan Cabrera Take It All Away record and go, oh, that sucks because Johnny Rzeznik. They're gonna go, oh, that sucks because Ryan Cabrera. So or it was my name on it. So I thought like, here's how it's gonna be. Now, mind you, that was just ignorance and not like understanding like the collaboration aspect of like, yo, it's give and take. And he had to learn that too. Like after the record was made, like we both like, we hated each other for a while during that. And then after like we saw each other at House of Blues and we just gave each other the biggest hug. And it was out, like respect of like, you know what, like you were right a lot of the times, I should have listened. And he had the same kind of, cognition of like, dude, that we both learned something from each other. We had something to give. We both had something to offer. And so we had to figure that out. But it created a tension in the music. And that's why I still to this day think that it was as successful as it was, is because of you could hear the tension in that record that was going on in real life.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's in the music. Like you can hear it.
I mean, does it come through on the way down?
Yeah. Yeah. It does. If you heard the demo,
I would love to.
of On the Way Down, you'd be like, whoa. But it's good. You could hear the potential of the song, and you could be like, all right, I think this could be a hit song. But then when you hear like the record that we made, it's like, that tension is real.
So John made the song into the song we know today.
Yes.
John.
So Johnny produced the whole first album. So that was quite the experience. I'd go home crying every day. Not every day, obviously, but all the times, yeah. I mean, it was my first album. It was like my baby. I was like, and now I'm all excited. I'm like, I'm making my first album, and he's just like, stop being a bitch. It was that kind of relationship. But he was hard on me, and I needed that. And now, like looking back at the time, you don't understand it. I was maybe 20 or 21.
He's still a kid.
Yeah. When we first started, I was like 19.
Like, I weirdly get that. Like, I worked very young, like being 15, 16 with like very old, really expert level people, but deeply jaded, who just knew what it was their way or the highway.
Yeah.
And collaboration wasn't really ingrained in who they are necessarily, right? Because they had done it and it worked really well. But it makes something great.
Yeah.
When it actually comes together and the two minds like find a flow.
I wouldn't have had it any other way.
It wouldn't have been
what it is. I grew up a lot because of him. And he'll probably never admit it, but I think he learned a lot about himself working on that album with me as well. So, because it got deep, like when you're making an album together, like especially back then, it was a little bit different than because, these days there's so much technology to do things quicker.
But you're together and it's vulnerable.
Every day. It was like a relationship.
By the way, by chance, this is the universe. He happens to be here tomorrow.
Oh my God.
On our show.
That's hilarious.
I'm like, well, I didn't know. I'm looking at the packet. I'm like, there's no fucking way that this
it's wild. That's crazy. I love it. Tell him I said hello. I mean, still one of my heroes. Can't believe I even got the chance to work with him. But at the time, you throw that out the door. You're making your album. It was like, this is my first album. This is the most important thing. I didn't look at him in that manner. And then after the fact, you're like, oh shit, that was Johnny Rzeznik. That's so cool. Are
you writing On the Way Down together, or do you like? How does who?
That one, no. Me and a couple of people wrote that in New York,
and you brought it to him.
Yeah, we brought him a bunch of, and then we wrote a song on the album together too. And funny story about that was, so he, some people know this, but like a lot of his stuff, he detunes his guitars, and so every song of his has like a different tuning. And so the first song we ever wrote, he's like, all right, just start untuning your strings. I'm like, huh? And I'm like, wait, I'd heard about this, that you do this. Because, if you learn how to play like Name or Slide, and you see how he does it, it's like, it's crazy what he does. And so we detuned the guitar, wrote this song, and then we did the demo, we went to go make the album, and I was like, did anybody write down what our tuning was? Because it was completely random. He's like, no. I was like, I didn't either. So still to this day, I don't know how to play that song the way we wrote it. I mean, I figured out like chords, but it was never the way that we actually wrote it that day, because my dumb ass, I was just like, Johnny Rzeznik told me to untune my guitar. I do it. I did it. We wrote a song, and I'm like, oh, I just wrote a song with Johnny Rzeznik. Never even thought like, I probably should have noted down what we tuned that guitar to. So I'll never play it the way I wrote it. It's a random story, but.
A part of that's special though.
Oh my God, it was amazing.
Is it true that an executive wanted you to cut your hair and make it like Rob Thomas?
They wanted me to shave my head. So that was album 3. So album 3, I went to London and kind of, was going through some different things at that time. And, we'd put out 2 albums, and, the hair was obviously something that at that time. So for those who don't know, I had crazy spiky hair. Big. It's not crazy anymore at all. Very big, still big, but, and it was kind of a thing. So when, you go do interviews and stuff, like you're going to this radio station and you want to talk about music, and they're like, dude, how do you do your hair? You're doing like a magazine article interview, and they're like, let's do the 10 steps to do your hair. So everything's about hair. So at that time, they're like, dude, we have an idea. We're going to shave your head, and that'll be like the promotion for that. I was like, what does that have to do with anything? I was like, for me, I wanted like the music to speak for itself. I was like, I feel like I wrote some cool songs like that shit. They're like, no, we got to do image change. Like, we did it with Rob Thomas and it worked great and everyone loved it. He shaved his head. I'm like, well, I'm not Rob Thomas. And that was their thing. Come to find out, so my manager now manages Rob Thomas and Matchbox 20. And so I told him the story. We've been working together for like 12 years now, but I told him that story when we first met. He's like, that's not true at all. Like Rob just did that on his own. But the label wanted to take credit for it. Like it was their idea.
Really, it sounds like a label thing to do.
They told me like, yo, we have this idea. We did it with Rob. It worked. And so I did the opposite. So I grew my hair out long and grew out a mustache and a beard. And then I got dropped. Worked great. But I was in that mindset of like, yo, I write music. I'm not trying to, I didn't realize that, I guess, like an image, but more so back then, image played more of a part than it does now, which is, I think, amazing. Now it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter, anything. You have a voice and you don't look like you match that voice. That's even better. They love that. But then, this was 2008. They're like, an image is a thing. They thought like you had to have a certain image to have this sound. And when I turned in that record, the president of the label looks at me, he's like, this is a hit record. I was like, hell yeah. I was like, I did it. He goes, but for somebody else. I was like, wait, what do you mean? They're like, this would be a hit record for like the Killers, or somebody else. It's not, what we hear for you. So we can, give that to somebody else. I was like, but I wrote it. I was like, I was just trying to kind of, evolve in songwriting and go with something different. It was, a little more whatever. But, I guess at that time they didn't want me to evolve. They would go, can you just write like another True? Like, let's put out another, love acoustic ballad. And I'm like, I already did that.
That's what they know works.
Yeah, exactly. Which, I see both sides. Like, I understand kind of like, it's like, we know this works for you, but, as an artist, you don't really want to be pigeonholed into one sound. So, yeah. So then that was why I got dropped.
Do you fight them on that and you release that album?
Well, yeah, they wanted me to rewrite an album, like keep writing. And I'm like, but I like this album. Like, I want to put this out. No matter what, I somehow had to put this out. And I couldn't do it on my own because I was signed to a certain number of deals. But for me, at that time, I didn't care. I wanted my art heard. Yeah. And it was the only way to do it was to get dropped. So obviously, hindsight being 2020, it's like you could either go with the money or go with the art. And at the time, went with the art. And I put out the album, and I don't regret it because I love that album. And I know there's a lot of people, obviously didn't sell, as popular as any of the other albums, but there are people in this world that those songs saved their life, or made their lives better. So you can never regret kind of your decisions when you put out music. And it's different now because you can kind of throw out things just on the internet and be like, all right, people get to hear it. But I didn't really have that, I didn't have that at the time.
You had to commit to the whole body of work because that's how it worked.
And the label had to approve putting out your album or not.
That's, again, like another major sign of just like creating art and shaping culture at a very different point in our history.
Well, the demographic changed quite differently after that one.
What do you mean?
Because it was I went from, a lot of, female-based, like younger female-based audience to, just started seeing different people show up when I made that independent album. So it was crazy. But then now, we started in 2015, we started doing this Pop 2000 tour, and
people live for that.
It started to blow up. And
nostalgia
it was great. Yeah.
Like, people need it. Have you realized, like, people need nostalgia to escape their present?
Yeah. Well, and I'm not going to knock any new music now because there's a lot of amazing new artists, but those songs are, like you said before, like a lot of songs are timeless, and they're also different. Like I find a lot of stuff, nowadays, kind of sounds similar. Like there's a sound on the radio, and it could almost be any voice. Like almost any artist can do that. Versus like only this artist could get away with this song, which is cool, when you're writing, music, and there's a place for everything. But I found that was kind of something that people at that time were like kind of gravitating towards, is like, yo, here, only Sugar Ray could do Fly, somebody else can, only Uncle Cracker could do whatever Uncle Cracker was, only Johnny Rzeznik could do Goo Goo Doll, you can't just give that song to somebody else and it be, still a great song, but it wouldn't ever be like the hit like it was, or the sound it was.
Totally different. I mean, by the way, you also came at a time where like paparazzi started to feel like it was just not only a threat to one's safety, but such a big catalyst to discussion and people's interest in you, right?
Oh yeah, that was like I think Perez Hilton was kind of like the starter of all the paparazzi
Paris,
stuff.
Lindsay.
Yeah, Lindsay. Oh
Dude,
yeah,
the Samantha Ronson, Lindsay Lohan era.
Yeah.
And you lived through a couple different ones because like paparazzi continues around the hills.
Mm-hmm.
It's not until like in the last like 5-8 years that paparazzi has totally taken a different form.
Right.
It's like now just like people streaming on their phone.
Yeah, I remember like the days of Perez Hilton when he was mean.
Yeah.
Living through that was tough.
I mean, totally different time.
Oh yeah, because I guess he's nice now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I see him. So yeah, but I mean, it's cool to go through all those different.
But that affects you though.
ways.
Like, you can't sit here and say that like Perez Hilton did some mean shit to you.
Oh yeah,
He
brutal.
I mean, he painted jizz all over your face.
He did a lot of times. A lot of
He
times.
did a what?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Painted.
It's what he would do.
That
He
was to
would-
say, if you got, I mean, at that point, yeah, if you got or like loser and all this stuff, and then I remember we were out somewhere, I forget it was a club. I was dating Riley Keough at the time, who was Lisa Marie Presley's daughter, and I was there with Riley and Lisa, and someone came up to our table and was like, "Yo, Perez Hilton wants to say hi to Lisa and you guys," and I'm like, "No." I was like, "Can you cuss on here?"
Yes.
Yeah, I was literally just like, "Fuck that." I was like, "Absolutely not." Like, yeah, but it's Perez Hilton. This will be a good because then you know he'll stop talking shit about you. I was like, "I don't care." I was like, he doesn't know me. He doesn't know my life. I was like, "No." I was like, "No, we can't. No, we're not going over there to say hi." I was like, "If he wants to come say hi to Lisa and she wants to say hi to him, that's fine. But we're not getting up and going to say hi to him at that time." And then eventually, fast forward, and then I remember seeing on the schedule like going in, and I guess he started writing because he was writing a lot of nasty things about them too at the time, and me and Riley and the family, and like I'm like, I'm not giving in just because maybe he'll be nice to me online because we're going to go say hi or whatnot. And I was like, it is what it is. And then eventually, you know, it worked out and the culture kind of shifted, and then he kind of realized that, you know, maybe that was, you know, it sold things, but who cares? You know, at the end of the day, we're all humans, so it's like, so it does affect you in a way. I've never been one to like read like comments though. Like that's just never been my thing.
But also living through that era does toughen your skin.
Yeah, 100%.
Like,
Yeah.
you could live through that.
Yeah,
You're
it didn't affect me as much as I cared more so like my parent, like my mom. You know, like those are people who read that stuff and it upsets them. Like, 'cause my mom thought like that stuff was real. She doesn't know any better, or my grandma. You know, like they don't know, but they just see their son or grandson and they're like very happy for him that, you know, that he's doing what he loves. And then you see that kind of stuff. Or there's like a lot of obviously BS that, you know, tabloids put out that aren't true at all, like literally zero truth to it. And for me, I could be like, well, I know it's not true. But then your mom's like, why would you do that? I'm like, Mom, it's not true. Like and you know, like we're doing just fine. Like we're not like hitting rock bottom. None of that shit. I'd ever, you know, blah, blah, blah. And she'd be like, well, how can they write that if it's not true? Like, you could write anything you want. She didn't understand that like you can write bullshit about people and you know, whatever. They just do anything to sell a story or a magazine. And so that was the only reason why I cared. If I cared, it was because of that.
rightfully so. And by the way, like that, some of that stuff still exists today. Like, you know, podcasts, like paywalls, like the whole thing. Like it does.
Oh yeah, the internet.
Totally different form though. Like,
yeah,
and it does. Like, you know, that information. Like you're right. Like parents would see it. Your grandma would see it. Like like the people around you.
Yeah, and whether it's true or not, like people
People
like, once they
believe it.
read it, they'll be like, oh my god, you know, whatever.
Yes.
It's sad.
Was it fun being a heartthrob in the early 2000s?
Yeah.
I bet.
I never thought of myself that way though. Like even no matter what, like I never bought into it. Like I never, you know, bought my own like
You did drink your own
thing.
Kool-Aid?
Yeah, I was never like, oh my god, I'm a heartthrob. I always thought it was kind of silly, but it's still fun when you're doing, you know, you grew up and you're doing, you find yourself doing this stuff. I'll never forget like doing that shit like a Tiger Beat and be like, what am I doing? This is not at all what I, you know, I'm a singer songwriter at heart, you know, and you can't help what your demographic, you know, is when you come out there. It is what it is. I thought it was going to be like college kids and, you know, that kind of thing. And then you go out there and it's like screaming 13-year-old girls and you're not expecting that because you don't know how people are going to take your stuff. And then I was like, oh my God. Like I remember one of the first tours I ever did was like a mall tour. And of course, yeah, I'm like, I'm a singer-songwriter doing a mall tour. But then I go out there and it was like, girl like foaming out of the mouth, passing out, like screaming loudest she ever heard. And I'm like, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of fun. It is kind of fun. Like, but I mean, the biggest thing for me was the TRL wall.
Oh,
I was like going to the glass. Like that was for me like the moment of like, holy shit, this is pretty cool.
when Times Square is just
Times Square,
with
just
people.
tons of people and girls. Like that was cool. But I never was like, oh my God, I'm a heartthrob. My friends would beat my ass if I ever was like that. But it was cool. The TRL thing was cool. And I was like, dude, I want to go down there with all the people on TRL. And they're like, well, the studio was obviously where it was. And I remember asking them, I was like, yo, I'm supposed to perform up here, but they've been waiting there all night and through the morning and all that kind of shit. I was like, let me perform down there with all the people, and they let me.
Really?
So I went in the middle of Times Square and with the thousands and thousands of girls and sang On the Way Down acoustic.
All these things are rites of passage, like the mall tour, TRL,
Yeah,
like things.
70 mall tour.
Like
Never forget it.
All the radio promo stops you'd make.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, dude, it was nuts. It's good size though, but that's what builds your character and makes you who you are.
Is it true that Courtney Love tried to make out with you?
Not that I know of. I don't think so.
Apparently, Ashlee Simpson brought it up on the Ashlee Simpson Show.
Oh man, I wouldn't remember.
It's a long time ago, man.
It's possible. There were some things that went down that I've forgotten about that I see pictures like, oh my God, I forgot that happened. It's possible. I don't remember it.
Part of being
I think I remember hanging out at a table with her once. I don't remember how, but who knows?
God, you probably have so many memories with the most random people.
The most random. And I wish I could write a book.
Why not?
Just because all the stories are like, stuff that I just probably wouldn't share.
Interesting.
Didn't Lisa Marie once give you? Don't you have one of Elvis's rings?
I do.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah, that means a lot because that was Lisa was like a second mom to me. We all became really, really, really close, and so yeah, I have one of those and one from her as well. I used to always steal her rings. I'm like, that's mine. Give that to me, and I'd take hers and give her one. So those are things that mean a lot to me now. But
That's really
this is some crazy stories. Some are like fun and like I can tell, but the majority of the good ones, I'm like, I'm not calling people out.
You're a good friend.
For the stuff that happened. Well, a lot of it I did.
Yeah.
Calling myself out. But it is very, very, very interesting. And I've lived a very crazy life that most people wouldn't even know about.
How'd you end up with a WWE superstar?
That one started, there's a rumor gone right. So a lot of, I've read a lot, throughout my career, a lot of people that I've, supposedly dated or been with. And I'm like, I don't even know that person. I was like, I wish. But somebody started a rumor online that we were dating. And we weren't. We didn't even know each other. And I think we've talked about it many times. I think because I was on a show with Mike the Miz called Miz and Mrs. And so we've been friends for a long, long time. And so I think the wrestling community associated my Twitter because whoever was running Twitter was liking all of the wrestlers, specifically the female wrestlers. We'd had a young guy who was running it at the time, so I think he probably just had crushes on these girls. But in his mindset, he's like, "Oh, Ryan's on a show with another wrestler. It's probably good for him to
with the community.
engaging with the female wrestlers." Now, meanwhile, I didn't know this, and Lexi has now. She told me that she saw I was liking all of her stuff. And so Twitter's the one thing that I never did. It just wasn't my thing. I'll do Instagram. I'm not a huge social media person, but I'll do Instagram. So we had someone doing the Twitter, just whatever I would put, they would write on there. But he was running it, and so he was liking all her stuff. She was like, "Who? Why does Ryan Cabrera keep liking every single thing I do?" And she even screenshotted it. Has a video in her phone of Ryan Cabrera like, and she was telling one of the other female wrestler, look at that, Ryan Cabrera. She's like, isn't he married to Ashlee Simpson or something? She told that to her friend, which I'm not, but she thought that in her head. And so I guess I didn't even know that I guess I was creeping her out before I didn't even know she was.
So funny.
And so that guy told me, he was like, yo, she wrote you because of the rumor going around, and was like, oh my gosh, I heard we're dating. That's so funny. And so he told me, I got on there and I saw it, and I saw a picture of her. And I said, I wish, here's my number. Boom. And then sent her my number. We started chatting, and then the rest is history from there.
That's crazy.
It was a wild story because we kept being in the same city over and over and over again. Like, and which is wild because the WWE, obviously every Monday or every Friday, they're in a different city. And I was on my own tour, and every city that I was in, like, happened to be like where they were going to be. Or I was in New York doing like the Thanksgiving Day parade, and she's up there doing Madison Square Garden. I'm like, well, let's hang out. And it got to the point to where she was just like, okay, are you actually like just following me? I'm like, I swear to God, how would I know? Like, this tour has been set up forever. But I was like, no, this is fate, working itself out. And that next thing you know.
What's it like seeing her in character?
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
That's probably really cool.
It's cool because it's so different than what she is like. So when you see the character, I thought she was going to be, I'll be honest, I thought she was going to be a bitch. Because she's at the time she was a heel, and I saw her on TV. And I was like, and I believed it. She's just a really good actress. So I was like, oh my God, she's gonna be this huge bitch. And she's like the sweetest, most down to earth human, which is why we get along so well, and it actually worked out. But I was like, oh my God, you're so different. So then seeing her, how she's at home versus when you get in that ring, it's night and day, completely different person. Don't even recognize her. So that's cool.
Yeah,
and getting to see it in person is pretty dope.
Did she teach you any moves?
We've gotten in the ring, and I'll never do that again. Never again. That shit hurts. And I did not know that the rope, like wrestling rope, like it looks like it's like rubber bands. No. And so my happy ass, I get in there, I'm like, let's go, and I just run to the edge and I go, oh shit, and I just fall to the ground. My back is blood. It's metal. It's like boat wire.
Yeah.
What? You say, yeah, like people know that?
Well, no, I don't think people know that, but when you look at them stand on it to do those flips, you're like, it must be pretty sturdy.
I didn't think that.
Yeah.
I did not think about that. Mm-hmm. I was like, yeah, because knowing now some of the guys I know who are like over 300-400 pounds, because that rope is what's holding the whole ring together. So hindsight being 2020, now that I'm thinking about it, it makes complete sense that would have to be what it is, or else, what else? So it flung my ass down.
These guys using it, and it does look like rubber.
It does, and it's not like that in real person when you weigh 155 pounds. Totally different.
Or you see like Logan Paul just standing on it, and it's like, oh, that must be able to hold a lot of weight.
Yeah, like in order for it to not to just be flimsy to fall, you don't think about it until you get in there and do it. And then she gave me what they call a bump, which is where they hit you and you have to fall back, and it's so much harder than what it looks like. Like I hurt my neck, like I couldn't walk for 2 weeks. I was in like Epsom salt baths every day. It was terrible. Never again.
And by the way, you're next to your wife who does this once a week.
Yep, every week.
Numerous times a week.
Yeah.
All the time.
And the worst part is she does moves in her sleep.
Really?
Swear to God.
Wait, what?
Oh yeah, I'll hear like right next to my head, and I'll hear and I'll feel it like right there, and I'm like, oh, that was way too close. Like she's doing like body stands, and I'm like, what the hell? And she knows because I wake up and I'm like, do you have anything you'd like to say to me? And she's like, I love you. I'm like, no, I need you to apologize because I just got whacked in the face.
Wait, so she'll do moves in her sleep?
Yeah, it's crazy.
She's dreaming about it?
I guess. I don't know. So, yeah, some people, dogs run in their sleep like they're running. She's doing wrestling moves.
Fascinating.
It's crazy
because it is a totally different life. Like it's a different art form.
Yeah, it's still entertainment, but it's so different than what like the music business in our world is like. Like that's more of like a traveling carnival, versus our business. So It was funny. It was interesting dynamic when she came into my world and seeing what our world is like, and then me going into her world. Because you would think, I've been around, I've seen a lot of things, but the wrestling world is crazy. It's totally different.
Not the same.
No, yeah, I don't know how how they do what they do. I have so much respect, especially after getting in that ring and seeing like how they do what they do. Like I have the utmost respect for her, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how they do it.
Crazy. What are you thinking over there?
Well, how did you get this group together for the 20th anniversary of On the Way Down?
Oh, like everybody that's on it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the Avengers boy band from TRL, but it's a motley crew. Along the way, Hollywood and LA and just the entertainment business is a lot smaller than most would think. So there's a lot of people who are friends with friends you would never even think are friends, and a lot of musician friends. And so I also know a lot of people from doing like a lot of charity shows in my house. So just meet people. So becoming friends with a lot of these guys is cool to me because I'm a fan of a lot of the people that I get to be friends with. And so I just texted some friends. I was like, dude, I have an idea that started with we want to remake a modern version of On the Way Down for the 20th anniversary. And it was originally, I was just going to do it by myself, didn't even think about it. But then we kind of hit a standstill of like, where do you take it that I don't want it to steer too far away from the original that people are like, what the hell is this? Because at some point, it was almost like an EDM song. I was like, no, we thought it was cool at the time. I was like, no, this sucks. I'm like, where do we go with it to make it sound current? And I just happened to be talking to Nick from Walk the Moon about something else. And I'm like, dude, I'm in the studio right now. If you're nearby, come by the studio because we're re-recording On the Way Down. And he's like, dude, I'm up at blah, blah, blah. So he comes by and he just sings this one part. I was like, dude, that's so cool. It sounds like Walk the Moon, but with all the way, he did like the On the Way Down. I was like, oh, that's sick. That sounds like Walk the Moon. I was like, dude, will you lay that down? So he lays it down and then just starts singing some other bits. I'm like, that's so cool. And that created the idea of like, and I was golfing with AJ like a couple of days later. I'm like, dude, so Nick from Walk the Moon just came in. He sang on All the Way Down. Like, what are you doing this afternoon? He's like, I got to get my girls later. But other than that, I'm free. I'm like, you want to come by the studio? Because we're recording All the Way Down 20th anniversary. He's like, sure. Comes by and I'm like, just do whatever you would do on this. Like, how would you sing it? And then he's, starts going off, like a Backstreet Boy would, does his thing. I'm like, dude, that's so cool to hear their take on this. And then that turned into just like, all right, who else would be cool? I was talking to Taylor. So Taylor Hanson came by. Me and Drake Bell were talking about something in Florida. And I was like, dude, I'm going to send you this. If you have any ideas, lay something down. And so he was in Mexico, laid something down, sent it back to me. I was like, that's sick. And then I was with Fatone from NSYNC talking about some Broadway thing he was doing. I was like, hey, I'm going to send you a voice note. Will you just lay something down? And then it just started forming. And then Nash Overstreet from Hot Shell Ray, got on it. And it just became this super eclectic, really cool, like special for I think, a lot of fans of artists from back then. And then fans, now maybe like Walk the Moon or Hot Shell Ray who, have, more current hits. All in one song. It's like, what other place could you get all these guys? And it's just friends, just who are like, yo, that'd be cool.
And it sounds good. It doesn't feel forced.
No, that's what we're really proud of. Yeah. It's like, this sounds like something I would listen to now. I think it's fun because it's like, yo, who's singing what? Kind of.
Yeah, that's what I was listening to, and I was trying to figure out who's singing what on the song.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Try to decipher. It's waiting for you. It's all on Amazon Music. All of Ryan's music is there too. There's a link below. Okay, it's waiting for you.
All except for the third independent album, which is nowhere to be found.
You can't find those albums.
I know. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, but they're yours?
Yeah.
So what?
I have no idea. I don't know how that works. But I'll get messages sometimes like, yo, what happened to The Moon Underwater? It's not, it was that, which is that independent album.
What?
It's like not on anything. I don't know. I think you can get it on iTunes, but
you can't buy it.
Maybe that's why. Maybe Papa Joe, Joe Simpson's still like working that angle. Like, yo, you got to buy it.
Yeah, Frolic Room Records, Papa Joe Records.
Yeah. We had to start our label, huh?
So fascinating.
Yeah.
Like you were just a part of a very unique class of culture shapers.
I feel very blessed to be around when and have the career that I've had,
I mean, dude, like,
and still get to perform, I still, 20 years later with no, hits on the radio currently or now, still being able to perform, with my friends and having, a tour that's now bigger than it's ever been. And we're in our 9th year, and touring, if you can tour, like that's the key to obviously, the way streaming is, it's like, yeah, you got to tour. That's how you do it.
But the reality is too, like to make music in that physical era, like to sell, like it was just a different time, a different attachment, a different form of community. It's like everything was different. Like to reach the success that you reached back then, like even to do the same today is not the same monetarily.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
it's different.
Yeah. Like back then, like if you were a writer and you got a random album cut, you could still make a living and like actually do stuff. Today, if you're a writer and you're not getting a song that's being pushed to radio and has 1 billion streams, you really may need to be doing Uber to make ends meet.
Or even I mean, there was a song that I wrote for another artist that did really, really well, and you look at the checks now compared to what they were.
Totally different, right?
Yeah, so different. And I'm like, wait a second, that did really, really well. Why is this isn't what it used to be?
What
Crazy.
song is that?
It was a song on Avril Lavigne's last record, and it was huge. She's huge, everywhere, but especially like in Japan and Asia and stuff like that. And and then you'll look at it now. It's just so it's just different world. I think now if you can get a sync, like syncs are kind of where money is in music.
And your stuff will still get synced.
Yeah,
even your old stuff will get synced.
Yeah. You never because songs you never know when it's needed, and there's songs that you wrote a long time ago that like you could put out now and be like, that's a brand new song. Be like, well, I wrote it 15 years ago, but it just was either ahead of its time or
by the way,
things come back around. It's all cyclical.
You probably should. Like if you had songs that you wrote 15 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever.
Oh, we do. I got a whole catalog, but timing, kind of figuring out where to place things.
Because like you'll never match the sound of that moment in that year of that. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, because you can't chase it. You'll be behind.
Yes, no matter what you do, no matter how you like what you like try to emulate or channel, whatever the fuck. Like, you have a whole catalog of music that's not out.
Yeah. At some point, I'll just dump it all just for fans, just for like the real. Or I'm sure there's ways now to like make it like fun of like how you get music to people and stuff like that. And
that's cool. That's sick.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Wow. So how were you able to just store away songs?
Well, we write all the time. So you write. I probably have over 100 songs that nobody's ever heard.
From like
from everything. From
2004.
From probably 2001 when I started. Which is like that's what's fun now is without doing like the major label. So I'm on an indie label, and they're very very like pro. Like, hey, let's take something that you've never done before, like. Put it out and just, or make it like something special for, people who have, whatever had the most interaction with your blah, blah, blah this month or something like that. So that's cool to have. But, most songwriters have thousands of songs in their catalog.
You got to be
I can't imagine what like Ed Sheeran has up his sleeve.
Oh, insane.
Just sitting in vaults.
I just love the idea that they were like made in the early 2000s and they're so
and it
cool.
has a sound.
Yes.
And you don't change it. You don't re-record it.
Ever.
You keep it exactly how it was. And that's what's cool about music.
Because today everyone wants that.
Yeah, they're chasing a sound that you can't recreate now.
Ever, because
things are changed. The way we record and the way Pro Tools and everything is, on a keyboard or most things at least. A lot of people don't, but there's a sound back then that you can't find that now.
Real. Is there any Y2K fashion staples that you miss? Maybe you want to see come back?
I don't know. I don't miss the chokers. I had a lot of chokers. That was a big thing back then. I used to wear like the wrist sweatbands. That was the thing. I don't miss that.
You used to wear the ties?
Used to wear the ties. There's nothing wrong with that. The big ties too, though.
Yeah, the thick ones.
The big, thick ties.
Yeah, we weren't doing skinny ties back then.
Not much. Oh man. Well, maybe like. Do you remember like gerbos? Did you ever wear gerbos? You guys are too young. Gerbos were a thing. Martin Francis gerbos.
Can you Google that?
Oh, I got GIRBAU something. Gerbos were those were the
jeans?
The jam. Yeah,
like were they like big baggy jeans?
Yeah.
But you're a skinny jean guy. You like
I am now.
Really?
Back then, those gerbos. There was a lot of gerbos. It was remember the BK Knights, like British Knights were a thing.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw Kelsey. She was wearing the Adidas, like the Sambas.
Yeah.
Those were like the indoor soccer shoes.
Original back then.
Yeah. Those were the tits.
Culture's so weird, dude.
I know.
Time is crazy.
But it comes back. It's dope.
Everything is cyclical.
Yep.
Everything.
But we don't need to bring back the puka shells. I still wear them from time to time, though. just because my wife would be like, what are you wearing?
Do you have like one of your original puka shell necklaces?
I do. Yeah. I still have like the jewelry line stuff. Like there's not much, but I have stuff left over I had a jewelry line in Claire's.
That's amazing.
I still have some of the original. I have like 3 pieces left, and one of them is like the puka shells Ryan Cabrera necklace.
You save that forever.
Yeah.
Because that's just going to go to auction one day.
Maybe. You never know.
No, there's going to be
the old Claire's deal.
There's going to be some really, really, really random rich Ryan Cabrera
one piece
out there.
Yeah. I got to find him.
That's crazy. Very cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time and energy.
Oh my gosh,
today.
thank you for having me.
Anytime. Literally. You're you're very cool.
Thank you.
You're very much a real artist, but also
I can't believe you guys have Johnny tomorrow.
Yeah, that's like wild, right?
What?
Yeah,
crazy.
The universe.
Yeah.
The universe follows you. Do you believe in that shit? Like manifestation?
100%.
Yeah. Listen to the music. It's waiting for you on Amazon Music. You good?
Yep.
Ryan Cabrera, everybody.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.